Section 10. Among Germans, I am immediately understood when I say that theological blood is the ruin of philosophy. The Protestant pastor is the grandfather of German philosophy. Protestantism itself is its peccatum originale. Definition of Protestantism: hemiplegic paralysis of Christianity and of reason. One need only utter the words Tübingen School to get an understanding of what German philosophy is at bottom: a very artful form of theology. The Swabians are the best liars in Germany. They lie innocently. Why all the rejoicing over the appearance of Kant that went through the learned world of Germany, 3/4 of which is made up of the sons of preachers and teachers? Why the German conviction still echoing that with Kant came a change for the better? The theological instinct of German scholars made them see clearly just what had become possible again. A back stairs leading to the old ideal stood open. The concept of the true world, the concept of morality, is the essence of the world. The two most vicious errors that ever existed were once more, thanks to a subtle and wily skepticism, if not actually demonstrable, then at least no longer refutable. Reason, the prerogative of reason, does not go so far. Out of reality there had been made appearance, an absolutely false world. That of being had been turned into reality. The success of Kant is merely a theological success. He was, like Luther and Leibniz, but one more impediment to German integrity, already far from steady. Section 11. A word now against Kant as a moralist. A virtue must be our invention. It must spring out of our personal need and defense. In every other case, it is a source of danger. That which does not belong to our life menaces it. A virtue which has its roots in mere respect for the concept of virtue, as Kant would have it, is pernicious. Virtue, duty, good for its own sake, goodness grounded upon impersonality or a notion of universal validity, these are all chimeras, and in them one finds only an expression of the decay, the last collapse of life, the Chinese spirit of Königsberg. Quite the contrary is demanded by the most profound laws of self-preservation and of growth, to wit, that every man find his own virtue, his own categorical imperative. A nation goes to pieces when it confounds its duty with the general concept of duty. Nothing works a more complete and penetrating disaster than every impersonal duty, every sacrifice before the Moloch of abstraction. To think that no one has thought of Kant's categorical imperative as dangerous to life. The theological instinct alone took it under protection. An action prompted by the life instinct proves that it is a right action by the amount of pleasure that goes with it. And yet, that nihilist, with his bowels of Christian dogmatism, regarded pleasure as an objection. What destroys a man more quickly than to work, think, and feel without inner necessity, without any deep personal desire, without pleasure, as a mere automaton of duty? That is the recipe for decadence, and no less for idiocy. Kant became an idiot. And such a man was the contemporary of Goethe. This calamitous spinner of cobwebs passed for the German philosopher, still passes today. I forbid myself to say what I think of the Germans. Didn't Kant see in the French Revolution the transformation of the state from the inorganic form to the organic? Didn't he ask himself if there was a single event that could be explained, save on the assumption of a moral faculty in man, so that, on the basis of it, the tendency of mankind towards the good could be explained once and for all time? Kant's answer? That is revolution. Instinct at fault in everything and anything. Instinct as a revolt against nature. German décadence as a philosophy. That is Kant. Section 12. I put aside a few skeptics, the types of decency in the history of philosophy. The rest haven't the slightest conception of intellectual integrity. They behave like women. All these great enthusiasts and prodigies, they regard beautiful feelings as arguments, the heaving breast as the bellows of divine inspiration, conviction as the criterion of truth. In the end, with German innocence, Kant tried to give a scientific flavor to this form of corruption, this dearth of intellectual conscience, by calling it practical reason. He deliberately invented a variety of reasons, for use on occasions when it was desirable not to trouble with reason, that is, when morality, when the sublime command, "Thou shalt," was heard. When one recalls the fact that, among all peoples, the philosopher is no more than a development from the old type of priest, this inheritance from the priest, this fraud upon self, ceases to be remarkable. When a man feels that he has a divine mission, say, to lift up, to save, or to liberate mankind, when a man feels the divine spark in his heart, and believes that he is the mouthpiece of supernatural imperatives, when such a mission inflames him, it is only natural that he should stand beyond all merely reasonable standards of judgment. He feels that he is himself sanctified by this mission, that he is himself a type of a higher order. What has a priest to do with philosophy? He stands far above it, and hitherto the priest has ruled. He has determined the meaning of true and not true. Section 13. Let us not underestimate this fact, that we ourselves, we free spirits, are already a transvaluation of all values, a visualized declaration of war and victory against all the old concepts of true and not true. The most valuable intuitions are the last to be attained. The most valuable of all are those which determine methods. All the methods, all the principles of the scientific spirit of today were the targets for thousands of years of the most profound contempt. If a man inclined to them, he was excluded from the society of decent people. He passed as an enemy of God, as a scoffer at the truth, as one possessed. As a man of science, he belonged to the Chandala, footnote, the lowest of the Hindu castes, end footnote. We have had the whole pathetic stupidity of mankind against us. Their every notion of what the truth ought to be, of what the service of the truth ought to be, their every "thou shalt" was launched against us. Our objectives, our methods, our quiet, cautious, distrustful manner, all appeared to them as absolutely discreditable and contemptible. Looking back, one may almost ask oneself with reason, if it was not actually an aesthetic sense that kept men blind for so long. What they demanded of the truth was picturesque effectiveness, and of the learned, a strong appeal to their senses. It was our modesty that stood out longest against their taste. How well they guessed that, these turkey cocks of God!